Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Baumann. I'm the Senior Vice President at Global Strategy Group, and Wendy did set me up perfectly, so thank you very much. So my firm is a public opinion research and polling firm, and I want to talk today a little bit about how people like me can help people like you win some of the fights that you're trying to fight, to boost arts education and advocacy for that at various levels. So what I do and what my firm does is we do public opinion research for all sorts of things. We do it for political candidates, we do it for foundations, we have some business clients, but we also do it a lot for advocacy organizations, and that's actually what I specialize in. And we get hired by folks in all sorts of spaces, but that are trying to either pass legislation or convince a school board to pass something or a regulation or to fight against damaging ones. And we get hired to sort of help with two of the different points that we've been talking about today. And then the main one, the one I'm going to spend the most time on, is the consistent and effective messaging. The second is sort of in helping build and manage coalitions. So we use surveys, focus groups, a lot of new online methodology and tools, social media listening. But we basically get hired to really understand what voters' attitudes are about the issues that you care about. And sometimes not only voters, but elites, opinion makers, policy makers. We do research at that level too. And we do the exact kind of message testing that Wendy was just talking about. So a group will come to us and say, well, this bill is before the legislature. We want to help get it passed. How do we convince voters that this is something they should support, or not even support, but make phone calls to their legislatures to get behind? So we do a lot of work trying to help advocacy groups understand the best way to talk to voters and to elites to boost that kind of support and or activism behind a policy or anything that you're advocating for. The other thing we do that sort of works on the coalition front, and we do this a lot, is we'll do polls that advocacy groups can take to policymakers to show them that their constituents care a lot about an issue, and even more so to show them that they're going to vote on that issue. So I'm actually doing a poll right now for some environmental groups that they want to take to Congress to show some moderate Republican members of Congress that they should not include drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge as part of the tax bill. So we're doing a poll to sort of take in their districts, a very fair and balanced poll. I hate using that terminology from Fox News, but that has a lot of credibility, and we're doing it with a Republican pollster on the side as a partners to boost that credibility. And they're going to take it up to the Hill to policymakers, and the idea is to say, if you vote for this, you're putting your reelection in jeopery. So it's a little bit more of the stick than the carrot, but that can be an effective thing. And the other thing we do, I think, as mentioned before, a survey of teachers, we do that kind of survey work as well, to sort of help understand how different constituents, specialized constituents that play an important role in your policymaking, what their attitudes are, and how to sort of bring them to the table, how to talk to them in order to bring that to the table. So it's just all about understanding the various audiences that you may talk to, be it voters, policymakers, constituent groups. People like me can help you sort of understand how to more effectively talk to those folks. So what I'm just going to take a couple minutes to do is to talk a little bit about the best practices from all of our experience and my experience working in this space. I'm going to admit I have not done a ton of research on arts education, but I have some colleagues that have done a lot of work in the education space, a little bit on this, and I've talked to them, and so hopefully I'll bring some of their expertise into this, but I apologize since it's not my area of expertise. But I think that the learning that I have, that they have, and that I have just from the advocacy world is pretty relevant to you as well. We just heard that 90% of voters in New Jersey think arts education is important, and that's really good. But what's important to note here is that's sort of in the abstract. That's when voters aren't faced with a choice, right? And I think probably a lot of times what you're facing is people like arts education, but when it comes down to it, is the school board or the legislature or whoever going to put their money where their mouth is, or pass a standard and actually make this important? And when the choice is arts education versus property taxes or versus spending it on something else, then that 90% number can come down quite a bit. So again, what we specialize in, when you get into those specific fights, how do you convince people that, yeah, it is worth it? It is worth investing in arts education over whatever else people are sort of deciding between. And a couple best practices in the sort of the messaging is, first of all, decide on the message and stick to it. So This is about consistent and effective messaging. That is really important, and I think is something that's the advocacy groups often, it's very simple, but is often overlooked. You know, you'll think that you have 5 or 6 different talking points that you want to get across, and you want to try to sort of make all of them to everybody. Don't do that. Get your best 1 or 2, and just hammer that over and over and over again. And make sure message, you get bored of it, but the people you're talking to, it actually breaks through all the clutter in their lives. And that's just a sort of fundamental messaging point that's really good. The question is, how do you figure out what that message is? And so obviously that's where someone like me could come into play. Hearing what I think Arizona has done with their message triangle, I'm assumed is something they use someone like us. If you can't do that, you can't afford that, you don't have the resources, then, steal that from Arizona, from other folks that have done it. Better to do it in your own place, because Arizona is different than New Jersey, than Michigan. But, use what's out there. Use, because don't just, you got to go off your gut. I'm sure your gut is good, but there's data out there, and use that as you can. And the other thing that seems so simple, but so many people, particularly on the progressive side of the aisle, my clients, a lot of them, always forget, is when you're talking to voters, always bring it back to them. It's not about you, it's about them and their lives. And so you need to talk about messages and use messages that are relevant to them and their everyday concerns. Can't be abstract, can't be big. And so when it comes to education, it's all about what's best for the student, okay? When it comes to arts education or anything else, it's about how does my kid get the most benefit out of them going to school, right? And so, when I think about arts education, I think about some of the things that actually the messaging that you were just talking about in terms of, Wendy, in terms of today's art student, tomorrow's whatever. So the idea that arts education is essential to building a well-rounded kid and a creative thinker. That's something that I think all parents want. It's not about turning your kid into the next, Monet. It's about giving them the tools they need to succeed in college and beyond. Or maybe it's about how arts education boosts learning in other things. It's like if you take music, you're going to be better at math. People who have arts education have better graduation rates, that kind of thing. So, sort of have to bring it back to why this is important for your kid. And the other thing that's really important here is to sort of understand who your target is when it comes to voters. So if you're trying to influence a school board in Jefferson County here in Colorado, your probably most important voter is an independent white mom, right? Who's going to vote in a school board general election. But in Denver, a much more liberal place, you're talking to people that have very different priorities sometimes. And so you have to sort of speak to them and what matters to them. And so, for instance, an example of maybe what not to do, when you're talking to that white suburban mom in Jefferson County, I think we all, everybody in a survey would say that it's important for there to be equal access to arts education and for lower income kids and families to have access to that. And I think we all agree that that's important. That suburban mom is never going to vote on that. Telling her that that's the reason to support, a bill for arts education, you're going to lose her. She's got a million things to think about. She may agree with that, but when push comes to shove, if somebody else is saying, this is going to cost money, that it's going to raise your taxes, or it's going to take funding away from something else that your kids needs, that argument is going to just blow right by her. You got to keep it to what matters to her and to her kid. So that's basically the few 4 or 5 best practice points that I've got, and thank you for having me.